My son gave my car to his father-in-law. Just like that, no discussion, no respect. He drives like a real man, my son said, looking me straight in the eye. That car wasn't just any car. That car represented 30 years of sacrifice, 30 years of working double shifts so my family could have everything they needed. My son gave my car away like I was nothing, like my years of dedication meant nothing. But what my son didn't know was that giving away that car would cost him everything he thought he owned, everything I had built for him, everything I had secured for his future. Because when you disrespect the man who gave you life, who sacrificed everything for your dreams, there are consequences, real consequences. And my son was about to learn that lesson the hard way. My son gave my car to his father-in-law, thinking he was making a power move. He had no idea he was about to lose a fortune. Before I continue, subscribe and hit the notification bell because we publish new stories daily. Leave your like and tell us in the comments which city and country you're watching from. My name is John. I'm 57 years old, and I've spent the last 30 years building an empire for my family. I own a successful construction company that employs over 200 people. I've built luxury homes across 3 states. I've accumulated properties worth over $8 million. And I did it all for one reason: my family. My son Michael was my pride and joy. Everything I built, every sacrifice I made, every 16-hour workday I endured was for him and his future. But last Tuesday, my son gave my car to his father-in-law. Not just any car. My 2023 Mercedes AMG GT, worth $120,000. The car I bought myself after landing the biggest contract of my career. The car that represented 3 decades of blood, sweat, and determination. He handed over the keys like he owned it, like I was nobody. "Dad, Robert drives like a real man," Michael said, standing in my driveway with his arms crossed. "You're getting old. You don't need a car like this anymore." Robert, his father-in-law, stood there smirking, already jingling my keys. This man who had never worked a real day in his life, who lived off his wife's inheritance, who spent his days playing golf while I built my fortune from nothing. I stood there watching my son disrespect everything I had sacrificed for him. But what Michael didn't know was that disrespecting me would cost him everything. Everything I had built, everything I had planned to leave him. Everything he thought was already his. You see, Michael had gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. For the past 5 years, since he married Robert's daughter Sarah, he had been living in one of my properties, a 4-bedroom house in the best neighborhood in town, worth $450,000. I had been paying for his health insurance, his car insurance, even his grocery bills through a credit card linked to my business account. Every month, I transferred $5,000 to his checking account so he could focus on finishing his MBA instead of working. I had set up a college fund for his 2 children, my grandchildren, with over $300,000 already deposited. I had promised him a partnership in my construction company once he graduated. I had even put his name on several property deeds, making him co-owner of assets worth over $2 million. Michael thought he was untouchable because Daddy had given him everything, but giving away my car without asking, treating me like I was some senile old man who didn't deserve respect, that crossed a line. And when you cross, John Patterson, there are consequences. I watched Robert drive away in my Mercedes, and I made a decision. Michael was about to learn that everything he thought he owned was actually mine. And if he couldn't respect the man who built his comfortable life, then he didn't deserve that comfort. That night, I sat in my home office until 3 in the morning, making phone calls. First, I called my lawyer, Marcus Webb. Marcus had been handling my legal affairs for 15 years. "Marcus, I need you to prepare some documents. I want Micah removed from all property deeds immediately. I want the house he's living in back under my sole ownership. And I want his access to all business accounts terminated." "John, are you sure about this?" Marcus asked. "This is your son we're talking about." "My son just gave away my car like he owned it," I told him. "My son needs to learn what ownership actually means." Next, I called my accountant, Patricia Collins. Patricia managed my business finances and personal investments. "Patricia, I need you to freeze the monthly transfers to Michael's account, cancel his credit card access, remove him from the company payroll, and transfer the children's college fund into a restricted account that only I can access. That's a significant financial change, John. Patricia warned. Are you prepared for the consequences? The consequences of disrespect are always significant, I replied. Then I called Robert Martinez, my head of security. Robert handled background checks for all my employees and had connections throughout the city. Robert, I need you to run a complete background check on Robert Harrison, Michael's father-in-law. I want to know everything about his finances, his legal history, his business dealings, everything. How deep do you want me to go? Robert asked. Deep enough to find what he's hiding, I said. Men who disrespect other men's property usually have secrets worth exposing. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. By Thursday morning, I had all the information I needed. Robert Harrison wasn't just living off his wife's money. He was stealing from her family trust. Over the past 3 years, he had embezzled over $600,000 from his wife's inheritance, money that legally belonged to his children, including Sarah. He had been using the stolen money to fund gambling debts and pay for a secret apartment where he met other women. But the most interesting discovery was that Robert had been driving without a valid license for 8 months. His license had been suspended after his third DUI, something he had hidden from everyone, including his own family. The man who drives like a real man was actually driving illegally in my stolen car. I printed out every document Robert had found. Bank statements showing the embezzlement, photos of Robert entering and leaving his secret apartment, court records of his DUI arrests, video footage from casino security cameras showing him gambling away his family's money. I put everything in a folder labeled Robert Harrison, The Truth. Friday morning, I drove to Michael's house. My house, technically, since I owned it and he had never paid a cent toward the mortgage. I knocked on the door, and Michael answered, looking confused to see me there so early. Dad, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, walking past him into the living room. Sarah was there, feeding breakfast to their 2 children. She looked up nervously when she saw my expression. Michael, sit down, I commanded. My son had never heard me use that tone with him before. He sat. I placed the folder on the coffee table between us. This contains everything you need to know about your father-in-law, Robert Harrison, the man you think drives like a real man. Sarah's face went pale. She knew something was wrong. First, I continued, Robert has been driving my car illegally for 3 days. His license was suspended 8 months ago after his third DUI arrest. If he gets pulled over in my vehicle, my insurance is void, and I'm legally liable for any damage he causes. Michael started to speak, but I held up my hand. Second, your father-in-law has stolen $637,000 from your wife's family trust, money that belongs to Sarah and her siblings, money that was left to them by their grandfather. Robert has been forging signatures and transferring funds to cover gambling debts. Sarah gasped, her hands shaking as she reached for the folder. She opened it and saw the bank statements, her face crumbling as she realized the truth. Third, I said, watching Michael's confident expression dissolve, Robert maintains a secret apartment at 247 Oak Street, Unit 4B, where he meets various women. I have photos, receipts, and witness statements confirming his ongoing affairs. The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah started crying, not just from discovering her husband's betrayal, but from realizing her father had been lying to her entire family for years. Now, I continued, standing up, I want my car keys back. Immediately. And then we're going to discuss the changes I've made to our family arrangement. What changes? Michael asked, his voice barely a whisper. The house you're living in is no longer available to you rent-free. As of Monday, you'll need to start paying market rate rent of $3,000 per month or find somewhere else to live. Your monthly allowance has been terminated. Your credit card access has been revoked. Your children's college fund has been moved to a restricted account that only I control. Michael's face went white. Dad, you can't do this. We have an agreement. We had an agreement based on mutual respect, I replied. You violated that agreement when you gave away my property without permission. When you told me I was too old to drive my own car. When you decided your father-in-law's opinion mattered more than mine. I didn't mean it like that, Michael stammered. I just thought... You thought you could disrespect me without consequences, I interrupted. You thought everything I built belonged to you already. You forgot that I'm the one who owns everything. I'm the one who built this empire. I'm the one who sacrificed 30 years of my life so you could have opportunities I never had. Sarah looked up from the documents, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Patterson, I had no idea about any of this. I never would have let Michael take your car if I knew how you felt about it. Sarah, you're not responsible for your husband's actions or your father's crimes, I told her gently. But you need to decide if you're going to stay married to a man who disrespects his own family. I turned back to Michael. You have until Sunday evening to return my car and move out of my house. You can find an apartment, move in with Robert and his secrets, or figure out another solution. But you will no longer live off my generosity while treating me like I'm worthless. Dad, please, Michael begged. I made a mistake. I didn't realize. You didn't realize because you've never had to work for anything, I said. Everything you have, I gave you. The house, the car, the money, the job opportunities, the connections, everything. And the moment you felt secure enough to disrespect me, you showed me who you really are. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. I walked toward the door, then turned back one final time. Michael, I spent 30 years building something bigger than myself. I thought I was building it for you. But if you can't respect the man who built it, then you don't deserve to inherit it. That evening, Robert Harrison was arrested for embezzlement. The district attorney had received an anonymous tip, along with complete financial documentation proving his theft from the family trust. His wife, Patricia Harrison, filed for divorce the next morning after discovering the evidence of his affairs. Robert would eventually be sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay back the full amount he had stolen, plus damages. But the most satisfying moment came Sunday afternoon when Michael knocked on my door, holding the keys to my Mercedes. Dad, I'm sorry, he said, his eyes red from crying. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. I took the keys without saying anything. Sarah left me, he continued. She took the kids and moved in with her sister. She said she couldn't trust me anymore after seeing how I treated you. She said if I could disrespect my own father, I could disrespect anyone. I looked at my son, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in years. He looked broken, desperate, and finally humble. Michael, respect isn't something you give when it's convenient, I said. Respect is something you show consistently, especially to the people who have sacrificed the most for you. I know that now, he whispered. I just hope it's not too late. I studied his face for a long moment. This was my son, my only child. The boy I had taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, cheered for at every baseball game. The young man I'd guided through college, supported through his first job, celebrated when he got married. It's not too late, I finally said, but things are going to be different from now on. Over the next 6 months, Michael worked 3 jobs to pay rent on a small apartment across town. He attended marriage counseling with Sarah, trying to rebuild the trust he had destroyed. He called me every Sunday, not to ask for money or favors, but just to talk, to apologize again, to tell me about his week, his struggles, his small victories. For the first time in 5 years, my son was learning the value of hard work. He was learning that respect must be earned and maintained. He was learning that actions have consequences, and that the people who love you most can also be the ones you hurt most deeply. 1 year after the car incident, Michael came to my office. He was thinner, more tired looking, but there was something different in his eyes. Something I hadn't seen since he was a teenager working his first summer job at my construction company. Dad, I want to earn my way back into your life, he said, not through apologies or promises, but through actions. I want to work for your company again, but I want to start at the bottom. I want to learn the business the way you did, from the ground up. I leaned back in my chair, considering his request. The starting salary for a construction worker is $18 an hour. No special treatment, no shortcuts. You'll work 40 hours a week minimum, often in terrible weather. You'll take orders from men half your age, who have more experience than you do. I understand, Michael said without hesitation. And you'll still need to pay your own rent, buy your own groceries, handle your own insurance. I'm not giving you any more handouts. I wouldn't want them, he replied. I want to earn everything from now on. I looked at my son and saw something I thought I had lost forever. A man I could respect, a man who had learned that privilege comes with responsibility, and that taking someone for granted always comes with a cost. Report to the Jefferson Street site tomorrow at 6 a.m., I told him. Ask for Tony Rodriguez. Tell him you're the new guy, and that I said to treat you like any other rookie. Michael smiled. And for the first time in over a year, Prometa smiled back. 2 years later, Michael had worked his way up to site supervisor. He had reconciled with Sarah, and they had moved into a modest 3-bedroom house that they purchased with their own money. They had established their own savings account for their children's college funds. Michael drove a used Honda Civic that he had bought with his own earnings. But most importantly, Michael had learned to value what he had been given, and to respect the people who had given it to him. Every Sunday, we had dinner together as a family. Michael would tell me about his projects, ask for my advice on technical problems, and listen when I shared stories from my early days in construction. The Mercedes incident had cost Michael his comfortable lifestyle, his marriage for a time, and his relationship with his children, but it had given him something more valuable: the knowledge that respect, once lost, must be earned back through consistent action and genuine change. And it had given me back my son. Not the entitled young man who thought he deserved everything I had built, but a man who understood that the greatest gifts in life are the ones we work for, protect, and never take for granted. My son gave my car to his father-in-law, thinking it would make him look important. Instead, it taught him the most valuable lesson of his life: that disrespecting the people who love you most is the fastest way to lose everything that matters. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we need most, and sometimes the people who love us have to be tough enough to let us fail so we can learn how to succeed on our own terms. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to our channel for more real-life experiences. Hit the like button if you believe respect should be earned, not assumed, and tell us in the comments, have you ever had to teach someone close to you a difficult lesson about respect? Share your story below, and don't forget to tell us which city and country you're watching from. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 years after Michael started working for me again, something happened that would test everything we had rebuilt together. Something that would show me whether my son had truly learned the lessons I had tried to teach him, or if he was still the same entitled young man who thought he could take shortcuts through life. It started on a Thursday morning in March. I was reviewing the quarterly financial reports when my secretary, Linda, knocked on my office door. "Mr. Pedersen, there's someone here to see you." He says, "It's about Michael." The man who entered my office was tall, well-dressed, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that comes from inherited wealth. He introduced himself as Richard Blackwood, president of Blackwood Development Corporation. I knew the name. Blackwood Development was one of the largest construction companies on the East Coast, with contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "Mr. Pedersen, I'll get straight to the point," Richard said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I want to offer your son Michael a position as project director for our new downtown redevelopment project. The contract is worth $47 million, and we need someone with fresh ideas and proven leadership skills." I studied Richard's face, looking for the angle. Men like Richard Blackwood didn't offer prestigious positions to small-town site supervisors without a reason. "What makes you think Michael is qualified for that kind of responsibility?" I asked. Richard smiled. "We've been watching his work for the past 2 years. His innovation on the Jefferson Street project saved you over $200,000 in material costs. His safety protocols have become the industry standard for 3 counties, and his team consistently finishes projects ahead of schedule and under budget." That was all true. Michael had transformed from an entitled young man into one of the most respected supervisors in the region. But I sensed there was more to Richard's offer. "What's the salary?" "Primera, asked. Base salary of $180,000 per year, plus performance bonuses that could bring his total compensation to over $300,000 annually. We're also offering a company car, full benefits, and a signing bonus of $50,000. It was an incredible offer. More money than Michael had ever imagined earning, the kind of opportunity that could set him up for life. "There's just one condition," Richard continued, and there it was. The catch I had been waiting for. What condition? Michael would need to start immediately. The project begins next Monday, and we need him to relocate to Philadelphia within 2 weeks. We're offering to pay all moving expenses and provide temporary housing until he finds something permanent. I leaned back in my chair, understanding the situation perfectly. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a test. Richard Blackwood was offering Michael everything he had lost 3 years ago. Instant wealth, prestige, and the chance to skip the slow process of building something from the ground up. "Why are you telling me this instead of talking to Michael directly?" I asked. Richard's smile faltered slightly. "We tried to contact him, but he said he needed to discuss it with you first. He said he wouldn't make any major career decisions without your input. That's actually part of why we want him. He shows loyalty and respect for family, qualities that are rare in business today." After Richard left, I sat in my office thinking about the offer. 3 years ago, Michael would have accepted immediately without considering the consequences. He would have seen the money and the title and jumped at the chance for instant success. But the Michael who had been humbled by losing everything, who had spent 2 years working his way back up from nothing, that Michael had asked to talk to me first. That evening, Michael came to my house for our usual Sunday dinner, even though it was Thursday. He had requested a special meeting to discuss something important. "Dad, I got a job offer today," he began, and I could see the excitement in his eyes, carefully controlled, but still visible. "Tell me about it," I said, even though I already knew the details. Michael explained the offer, the salary, the responsibilities, the relocation requirement. As he spoke, I watched his face carefully, looking for signs of the old Michael. The Michael who thought shortcuts were better than hard work. The Michael who valued money more than relationships. "It's an incredible opportunity," he concluded. "Life-changing money. The kind of position I dreamed about when I was getting my MBA. What's holding you back?" I asked. Michael was quiet for a long moment. "You," he said finally. "Us. This family. 3 years ago, I would have packed my bags the same day without thinking about what I was leaving behind. But I've learned that some things are more valuable than money. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. Sarah and I just got to a good place in our marriage," he continued. "The kids are settled in school. They have friends here. They're close to their grandparents. And I'm finally earning your respect again. I'm not sure I want to risk all of that for a job, even a great job." I looked at my son and realized he had passed the test without even knowing he was being tested. The old Michael would have seen only the opportunity. The new Michael saw the potential cost. "What does Sarah think about the offer?" I asked. "She said she'll support whatever decision I make, but I can tell she doesn't want to leave. Her sister lives here. Her support system is here. And after everything we went through with her father, she values family stability more than ever." "What do you want to do?" I asked. Michael sighed. "Honestly, part of me wants to take it. It's everything I thought I wanted when I was younger, but a bigger part of me is scared that if I leave, I'll lose what I've built here, that I'll go back to being the person I was before I learned these lessons." That night, I called Richard Blackwood. "Richard, this is John Patterson. I wanted to discuss your offer to my son." "I hope he's considering it seriously," Richard replied. "We really need someone with his skills." "He is considering it," I said, "but I have a counterproposal." "I'm listening." "What if Michael could consult on your Philadelphia project without relocating? He could spend 1 week per month on-site, handle the rest remotely, and maintain his primary residence. Here, you'd get his expertise without forcing him to abandon his family commitments." There was a pause. "That's unconventional. Most project directors need to be on-site full-time. Most project directors haven't built their reputation by consistently delivering projects ahead of schedule and under budget." I replied, "Michael has proven he can manage complex operations efficiently, and with today's technology, remote collaboration is more feasible than ever." "What would be the compensation structure for an arrangement like that?" "Base salary of $120,000, plus project bonuses based on performance milestones. He keeps his current position with my company and treats the Philadelphia work as additional consulting." Another pause. "Let me discuss this with my board, and get back to you." 2 days later, Richard called with an acceptance. Michael would consult on the Philadelphia project while maintaining his life and career in our hometown. It wasn't the full offer, but it was a compromise that allowed him to advance professionally without sacrificing everything he had rebuilt. When I told Michael about the arrangement, his reaction surprised me. "Dad, you didn't have to negotiate for me," he said. "I'm capable of handling my own career decisions now." "I know you are," I replied. "But family helps. Family, and sometimes experience can open doors that talent alone can't." Michael smiled. 3 years ago, I would have been angry that you interfered. I would have felt like you didn't trust me to handle my own business. And now I realize you were trying to help me find a solution I hadn't considered. You turned an either-or decision into a both-and opportunity. The Philadelphia consulting arrangement turned out to be incredibly successful. Michael's innovative approaches to project management impressed Richard Blackwood so much that Blackwood Development offered him additional contracts. Within 18 months, Michael was consulting for 3 major development companies while still working as my senior project manager. By his 4th year back with my company, Michael was earning over $200,000 annually from his combined salary and consulting fees. But more importantly, he was earning it while maintaining the family relationships and community connections that he had learned to value. One evening, as we were reviewing plans for a new commercial complex, Michael looked up from the blueprints and said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." "What's that?" "I've been thinking about the car incident a lot lately. Not just what I did wrong, but what it taught me about ownership and respect." I set down my pen and gave him my full attention. "I realized that I had been treating everything you built as if it was already mine," he continued. "The house, the money, the business opportunities, even your car. I acted like I was entitled to all of it, without understanding what you had sacrificed to create it." "That's true," I said simply, "but I also realized something else. You didn't just punish me for disrespecting you. You taught me how to build my own foundation. When you took away all the things I thought I owned, you forced me to discover what I was actually capable of creating for myself." Michael pointed to the financial reports spread across my desk. "These consulting contracts, the reputation I've built, the respect I've earned from other companies, none of that came from what you gave me. It came from what I built after you took everything away." "And how does that make you feel?" I asked. "Grateful," he said without hesitation. "Because now I know the difference between having something and earning something. When I was living in your house, rent-free, driving cars you paid for, spending money you transferred to my account, I never felt like I truly owned anything. I felt dependent, even though I was too proud to admit it." He gestured toward the consulting contracts. "But this is mine. I earned every dollar through my own skills and effort. And that feeling of genuine ownership is worth more than all the comfort you used to provide." 6 months later, Michael came to me with a proposal that would test our relationship in an entirely different way. "Dad, I want to buy the Jefferson Street property from you," he said. "Not as a gift, not as a family discount, but as a legitimate business transaction at fair market value." The Jefferson Street property was a 12-acre plot of undeveloped land that I had purchased 15 years earlier for $200,000. It was now worth over $800,000 due to recent commercial development in the area. "Why that property specifically?" I asked. "Because it's where I learned to work again," Michael replied. "It's where I spent 2 years rebuilding my reputation and proving that I could be trusted with responsibility. I want to develop it into something meaningful, something that represents the person I've become." "What kind of development?" Michael spread architectural plans across my desk. "Mixed-use, residential, and commercial. Affordable housing units for working families, small business spaces for local entrepreneurs, a community center with childcare services. I want to build something that gives back to the community that helped me grow up." I studied the plans carefully. They were well-conceived, financially sound, and socially responsible. But more than that, they reflected values that Michael had learned through his journey back from rock bottom. "How do you plan to finance the purchase and development?" I asked. "I've been saving every penny from my consulting work for the past 2 years," he said. "I have $400,000 in cash for the down payment. I've already been approved for a commercial development loan for the remaining costs. The project will be entirely self-funded with no financial assistance from you. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. I looked at my son and realized that somewhere along the way, he had become the kind of man I had always hoped he would be. Not just successful, but successful in a way that honored the values I had tried to teach him. The property is yours, I said, but I have one condition. Michael's face tensed slightly. What condition? I smiled. I want to be the first person to rent office space in your commercial complex. Pattison Construction needs a satellite office on the south side of town, and I can't think of a better landlord than someone who understands the value of hard work and family respect. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Dad, you don't have to do that. I want to, I replied, because supporting your business isn't charity. It's recognizing quality and investing in someone I trust. The Jefferson Street development took 3 years to complete. During that time, I watched Michael navigate the challenges of property development with the same methodical approach he had learned during his reconstruction period. He hired local contractors whenever possible, maintained strict quality standards, and treated every worker with the respect he had learned to value. When the complex was finally complete, the opening ceremony was attended by over 500 people from our community. The mayor spoke about the importance of responsible development. Local business owners praised Michael for creating affordable commercial space. Families who had moved into the residential units talked about how the community center had enriched their children's lives. But the moment that meant the most to me was when Michael stood up to address the crowd. This project represents more than just buildings and apartments, he said. It represents the importance of second chances, hard work, and the people who love us enough to let us fail so we can learn how to succeed. He looked directly at me in the audience. My father taught me that respect isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn through your actions, maintain through your consistency, and demonstrate through your willingness to put others before yourself. He also taught me that the greatest gifts aren't the ones that are given to us, but the ones we create for others. This development exists because I learned that building something meaningful requires sacrifice, dedication, and the humility to accept guidance from people who have walked the path before us. As I listened to my son speak, I realized that the car incident 4 years earlier had been the best thing that ever happened to our relationship. Not because it was pleasant or easy, but because it forced both of us to confront uncomfortable truths about respect, entitlement, and the real meaning of family. Michael had learned that taking someone for granted always comes with a cost. But I had learned something equally important, that sometimes the people we love most need to experience consequences in order to discover their own strength and character. The Mercedes that started this whole journey still sits in my garage. I drive it occasionally, but mostly it serves as a reminder of how a single moment of disrespect can change everything. How one thoughtless action can reveal years of accumulated entitlement but it also reminds me that relationships can be rebuilt, trust can be restored, and respect can be earned back through consistent action and genuine change. 3 months ago, Michael's development company was awarded a contract to build a new elementary school in our district. The contract is worth over $12 million, the largest project he has ever managed independently. When the school board announced their decision, they specifically mentioned Michael's reputation for integrity, community involvement, and treating all stakeholders with respect. Last week, Michael called to tell me that Sarah was pregnant with their 3rd child. They had bought a larger house with their own money, established college funds for all their children, and were considering expanding Michael's development company to include sustainable energy projects. Dad, I have something to tell you, Michael said during our Sunday dinner last week. What's that? I finally understand what you were trying to teach me all those years ago. Success isn't about how much money you make or how many possessions you accumulate. It's about building something meaningful that outlasts you and benefits people beyond your immediate family. He paused, looking around the table at his wife and children, then back at me. Thank you for taking away my car keys, he said quietly. And thank you for taking away everything else I thought I was entitled to. Because losing all of that taught me how to build something real. I looked at my son, my daughter-in-law, and my grandchildren, and realized that sometimes the hardest decisions we make for the people we love turn out to be the most important gifts we can give them. My son gave my car to his father-in-law 4 years ago, thinking it would make him look important. Instead, it set in motion a series of events that taught him the most valuable lessons of his life about respect, responsibility, and the true meaning of success. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone you love is refuse to enable their worst tendencies, even when it means watching them struggle to find their own way forward. Because the strength they discover in that struggle becomes the foundation for everything meaningful they build afterward. But there's more to this story. Something I never expected to happen. Something that would prove once and for all whether the lessons we had both learned were permanent or just temporary changes brought on by difficult circumstances. 5 years after the car incident, I was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. 43 years of construction dust, asbestos exposure from older buildings, and the stress of running a business had finally caught up with me. The doctors gave me 18 months to live, maybe 2 years, with aggressive treatment. I didn't tell Michael right away. I spent 2 weeks processing the diagnosis, meeting with oncologists, researching treatment options, and making decisions about my business and personal affairs. But eventually, I knew I had to have the conversation that every father dreads having with his son. I called Michael on a Tuesday evening and asked him to come to my house alone. When he arrived, I could see the concern in his eyes. We hadn't had a private meeting like this since the night I confronted him about the car. "Michael, sit down," I said, gesturing to the same chair where we had discussed his job offer 3 years earlier. "I need to tell you something important." I explained the diagnosis, the treatment options, the prognosis. I watched my son's face go through every emotion a person can experience. Shock, denial, anger, fear, and finally, a grim determination that reminded me of myself at his age. "What do the doctors recommend?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "Chemotherapy and radiation," I replied. 6 months of treatment that will make me sicker than I've ever been, followed by surgery to remove part of my lung. Even with all of that, there's only a 40% chance I'll live another 5 years. Michael was quiet for a long time, processing the information. Finally, he looked up at me and said, "What do you need from me? Not what can I do to help. Not how can we fix this. Not why didn't you tell me sooner. Just what do you need from me?" It was the response of a mature man who understood that some problems can't be solved, only managed. "I need you to take over the business," I said. "Not as a gift, not as an inheritance, but as a purchase. I want to sell you Pedersen Construction for fair market value while I'm still alive to see you run it." Michael's eyes widened. "Dad, the business is worth over $4 million. I don't have that kind of money." "You don't need it all at once," I replied. "We'll structure it as a leveraged buyout. You'll use the company's own cash flow to pay me back over 15 years. I'll retain a 20% stake and serve as chairman of the board until my health prevents me from working. Why not just wait and leave it to me in your will?" "Eh?" "Ask it. Because I want to see you succeed while I'm still here to enjoy it," I said. "And because selling it to you means you'll truly own it, not just inherit it. You'll have earned it through your own efforts and financial commitment." Over the next 3 months, while I underwent chemotherapy, Michael worked 18-hour days, learning every aspect of the business. He studied financial statements, met with major clients, reviewed contracts, and shadowed me during important negotiations. The chemotherapy made me weak and nauseous, but watching my son prepare to take over my life's work gave me strength I didn't know I had. The treatment was brutal. There were days when I couldn't get out of bed. Days when I threw up so violently that Sarah had to drive me to the emergency room. Days when I seriously considered giving up and just letting the cancer win. But Michael never let me quit. Every morning, he would call at exactly 7 o'clock. Not to check on my health, not to ask how I was feeling, but to discuss business, which projects needed my approval, which clients required personal attention, which employees had questions about their responsibilities. He kept me involved and relevant, even when I felt like I was dying. "Dad, the Henderson project is running 2 days behind schedule," he would say. "The electrical contractor had supply chain issues. Do you want me to bring in Johnson Electric as backup? Or should we push the completion date?" These conversations forced me to think about something other than my illness. They reminded me that I was still needed, still valuable, still contributing to something larger than my own survival. 6 months into my treatment, something unexpected happened. Michael's development company was offered the opportunity to bid on the largest commercial project in our county's history, a new regional hospital complex worth $87 million. The project would employ over 300 construction workers for 18 months and establish whoever won the contract as the dominant construction company in the region. "Dad, I want to submit a joint bid," Michael told me during one of our morning business calls. Patterson Construction and Hartwell Development working together. We combine your experience and reputation with my innovative approaches and energy efficiency expertise. "That's a massive undertaking," I said. "Are you sure you're ready for that level of responsibility?" "I'm sure," he replied without hesitation. "But I want you as lead consultant on the project. Your knowledge of hospital construction requirements could be the difference between winning and losing this contract." Despite my weakened condition, I threw myself into preparing the bid proposal. I reviewed architectural plans, calculated material costs, developed construction timelines, and wrote detailed project management protocols. Working on something this significant gave me a sense of purpose that no amount of medicine could provide. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. The day we submitted our bid, I was scheduled for my final chemotherapy session. Michael drove me to the hospital for treatment. Then we went directly to the county office to deliver our proposal. I was bald, 25 pounds underweight, and so weak I needed a wheel. But I insisted on being there when we handed over the document that represented months of collaboration. 3 weeks later, we received the call. Patterson Construction and Hartwell Development had won the contract. Our bid was not only the most cost-effective, but the county commissioners were impressed by our commitment to hiring local workers and using environmentally sustainable construction methods. "We did it, Dad," Michael said, hugging me carefully so he wouldn't hurt my fragile body. "We're going to build something incredible together." The hospital construction project became my legacy in ways I never expected. Despite my illness, I was able to contribute meaningfully to every phase of the development. I designed the foundation systems, supervised the structural engineering, and trained younger workers in specialized techniques I had developed over 4 decades in construction. But more importantly, working on the hospital project allowed me to spend quality time with Michael during what we both knew might be my final months. We worked side by side, sharing knowledge, solving problems, and building something that would serve our community for generations. 18 months after my diagnosis, the doctors told me something they hadn't expected to tell me. The cancer was in remission. The combination of aggressive treatment, staying actively involved in meaningful work, and having a purpose that kept me fighting had somehow given my body the strength to beat a disease that kills 70% of the people who develop it. "Mr. Patterson, your latest scans show no evidence of active cancer cells," Dr. Rodriguez told me during my follow-up appointment. "You're not cured, but you're in complete remission. With continued monitoring and healthy lifestyle choices, there's no reason you can't live many more productive years." I called Michael immediately after leaving the doctor's office. "The cancer's gone," I told him simply. There was silence on the phone, then I heard my son crying. Not just tearing up, but actually sobbing with relief and joy. "Dad, I thought I was going to lose you," he whispered. "I thought I was going to have to finish the hospital project without you." "You were prepared to do exactly that," I replied, "and you would have done it brilliantly. But I'm grateful I get to see it completed with you." The hospital project was finished 6 months ahead of schedule and 12% under budget. It became the model for sustainable healthcare construction throughout our region. More importantly, working together on something so significant had strengthened the relationship between Michael and me in ways that normal circumstances never could have. 2 years after my cancer went into remission, Michael made an announcement that surprised everyone, including me. "Dad, I want to expand our partnership," he said during a family dinner. "I want to create a new company, Patterson Hartwell Construction and Development. Equal partnership, shared ownership, combined expertise. What would that mean for your independent business?" "Primera, Asked, I'd merge Hartwell Development into the new company," he replied. "All my assets, all my contracts, all my employees, would become part of our joint enterprise. We'd be true partners, not just father and son working together occasionally. I looked at Sarah, who was smiling and nodding her approval. "This is what you want?" I asked her. "Michael has been talking about this for months," she said. "He wants to build something with you that will last beyond both your lifetimes. Something your grandchildren can inherit, not just as recipients, but as partners who have earned their place in the business." The new company, Pedersen Hartwell Construction and Development, became one of the most successful construction companies in our state. We specialized in sustainable commercial development, affordable housing projects, and community infrastructure improvements. Within 3 years, we were employing over 400 people and managing contracts worth over $200 million annually. But the real success wasn't measured in dollars or projects completed. It was measured in the relationship Michael and I had built together. We had started as father and son, moved through a period of conflict and separation, rebuilt our connection through mutual respect, and finally become genuine business partners who trusted each other completely. 5 years after my cancer remission, Michael and Sarah welcomed their 4th child, a daughter they named Patricia, after my late wife. When I held my granddaughter for the first time, Michael said something that brought tears to my eyes. "Dad, I want her to grow up knowing that success comes from respecting the people who came before you, while building something meaningful for the people who come after you. She'll learn that by watching how you live," I replied. Last month, Michael was elected to the City Council. His platform focused on responsible development, job creation, and supporting local businesses. During his acceptance speech, he talked about the importance of learning from failure and earning respect through consistent action. 7 years ago, I made a serious mistake that cost me my relationship with my father and almost destroyed my marriage, he told the crowd. I learned that taking people for granted always comes with consequences, and that rebuilding trust requires more than apologies. It requires fundamental changes in how you treat the people who matter most. He looked directly at me in the audience. "My father taught me that respect isn't inherited, it's earned. That lesson changed my life and made me the man I am today. As your city council member, I promise to earn your respect through my actions, not just my words." After the speech, a young reporter asked Michael about his relationship with me. "Your father's been pretty tough on you over the years. Do you resent that?" Michael smiled. "My father gave me the greatest gift any parent can give their child. He refused to enable my worst tendencies. When I was acting entitled and disrespectful, he held me accountable. When I lost everything due to my own poor choices, he let me experience the consequences instead of rescuing me immediately." "That seems harsh," the reporter said. "It was harsh," Michael agreed, "but it was also necessary. Because of that harshness, I learned to value what I have, respect the people who helped me get it, and build something meaningful rather than just coasting on someone else's achievements." 2 weeks ago, Michael came to me with news that would have terrified me 7 years earlier, but now fills me with pride. "Dad, I've been offered a position as Regional Development Director for the Department of Housing and Urban Development," he said. "It's a federal appointment that would require us to relocate to Washington, D.C. for 4 years. What does Sarah think about it?" I asked. "She's excited about the opportunity," he replied. "The kids are old enough to handle the move, and she thinks it would be good for them to experience life in a different city. And the business." "That's what I want to talk to you about," Michael said. "I want you to resume full control of Pedersen Hartwell. While I'm in Washington, you'll run the day-to-day operations, and I'll serve as an advisor and strategic consultant. When I come back in 4 years, we'll reassess the partnership structure based on what makes sense at that time." 7 years earlier, if Michael had been offered a prestigious government position, he would have accepted immediately without considering the impact on our family business or asking for my input. He would have seen it as his chance to escape small-town life and prove he was destined for bigger things. But this Michael, the one who had learned hard lessons about respect and responsibility, was approaching the opportunity with careful consideration of all the people and commitments involved. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I want to take the position," he said, honestly. "It's a chance to influence housing policy at the national level, to help create programs that benefit communities like ours across the country. But I also want to make sure I'm not abandoning the business we've built together." "You're not abandoning anything," I assured him. "You're expanding your influence and expertise, so you can bring that knowledge back to benefit our local community. Take de job. I'll keep our business thriving until you're ready to return. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. Yesterday was Michael's last day in the office before moving to Washington. As we reviewed the transition plans and discussed ongoing projects, I reflected on the journey we had taken together over the past 7 years. We started with a son who felt entitled to his father's possessions, and a father who had enabled that entitlement for too long. We went through a period of conflict, separation, and painful lessons about respect and responsibility. We rebuilt our relationship through mutual effort and genuine change. We worked together through my cancer diagnosis and treatment. We created a successful business partnership based on trust and shared values. And now we were confidently separating again, not because of conflict or disrespect, but because we had built something strong enough to survive temporary distance and mature enough to support each other's individual growth. "Dad, I have something for you," Michael said, reaching into his desk drawer. He pulled out a small wrapped box and handed it to me. Inside was a keychain with a small silver medallion engraved with the words, "Respect earned, trust rebuilt, legacy secured." "Thank you for teaching me that. Taking shortcuts always costs more than doing things right," he said. "Thank you for holding me accountable when I didn't want to be held accountable. Thank you for letting me fail so I could learn how to succeed." I looked at the medallion, 10 at my son, and realized that the car incident 7 years earlier had been the beginning of the most important transformation in both our lives. "Michael, you don't need to thank me for being your father," I said, "but I do need to thank you for becoming the kind of man I'm proud to call my son." As I write this story, Michael has been in Washington for 3 months. He calls every Sunday to discuss business and family matters. Sarah sends photos of the kids exploring museums and monuments. The business is thriving under my renewed leadership, with several major projects scheduled for the coming year. But most importantly, I know that the lessons we learned together are permanent. Michael didn't just change his behavior to get back in my good graces. He fundamentally transformed his character and values in ways that will guide him for the rest of his life. My son gave my car to his father-in-law 7 years ago, thinking it would make him look important. That single act of disrespect set in motion a chain of events that taught us both invaluable lessons about family, responsibility, and the true meaning of success. Sometimes the most important gifts we give the people we love are the hardest ones to give. Accountability, consequences, and the opportunity to discover their own strength through struggle. And sometimes, the worst mistakes we make become the foundation for the best decisions we'll ever make. If we're willing to learn from them and change how we approach life moving forward, the car keys that started this whole story still hang on a hook in my garage, next to the keys to 3 other vehicles I've purchased since then. But those original keys will always remind me that respect, once lost, must be earned back through consistent action, genuine change, and the humility to accept that some lessons can only be learned the hard way. That's the real story of how my son grew from an entitled young man who thought he deserved everything into a mature leader who understands that the best things in life must be earned, protected, and shared with the people who helped make them possible. But even this isn't the end of our story, because 6 months after Michael moved to Washington, something happened that would test everything we had built together in ways neither of us could have anticipated. Something that would prove whether our rebuilt relationship could survive not just personal challenges, but external threats to everything we had worked to create. It started with a phone call at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday in October. I was sound asleep when my phone rang, displaying Michael's number. My first thought was that something had happened to Sarah or one of the grandchildren. "Dad, we have a problem." Michael's voice was tense, controlled, but I could hear the underlying panic. "A big problem." "What kind of problem?" I asked. "Immediately alert, the kind that could destroy everything we've built," he said. "I'm flying home tomorrow morning. Don't discuss this with anyone until I get there. And Dad, you might want to call Marcus Webb and have him meet us at the office tomorrow afternoon." When Michael arrived the next day, he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His usually neat appearance was disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, and he carried himself with the weight of someone bearing terrible news. We met in my office with Marcus Webb, our longtime attorney. Michael spread a stack of documents across my desk, each one stamped with official government seals and marked confidential investigation. 3 days ago, federal investigators raided the offices of Blackwood Development Corporation. Michael began. The company I consulted for 4 years ago. They've been under investigation for fraudulent billing practices, tax evasion, and conspiracy to defraud the federal government. I felt my stomach drop. What does that have to do with us? The Philadelphia project I worked on, the one that launched my consulting career. It turns out Richard Blackwood was using fake invoices and inflated cost reports to steal money from federal housing development grants. Over $14 million in fraudulent billing over 6 years. Marcus leaned forward. Michael, please tell me you didn't know about any fraudulent activities. I had no idea, Michael replied firmly. My job was project management and efficiency optimization. I never handled billing or financial reporting. But the investigators don't care about that. They're looking at everyone who worked on those projects, and my name is all over the documentation. What exactly are they alleging? I asked. Trying to keep my voice steady, Michael pulled out a thick folder. They're saying that anyone who worked on the fraudulent projects was either complicit in the fraud or willfully ignorant of obvious irregularities. They've frozen all of Blackwood's assets, including money that was paid to consultants. That includes the $430,000 I earned over 2 years of consulting work. Frozen how? Marcus asked. Complete asset seizure pending investigation, Michael replied. Every penny I earned from Blackwood Development is gone. Worse than that, they're demanding I repay all consulting fees as proceeds from criminal activity. They want $430,000 back, plus penalties and interest. Over $600,000 total. The room went silent. $600,000 was more than most people earned in 10 years. It was enough to bankrupt Michael personally and potentially damage our business partnership. There's more, Michael continued, his voice getting quieter. Because I used consulting income as part of the down payment for the Jefferson Street development, they're claiming that property was purchased with proceeds from criminal activity. They want to seize the entire development. 47 families live in those apartments. Dad, 15 small businesses operate in the commercial spaces. And if the government takes it, all those people lose everything. I sat back in my chair, trying to process the magnitude of what Michael was telling me. In one investigation, federal agents were threatening to destroy not just my son's financial security, but the livelihoods of dozens of families who had nothing to do with any fraudulent activity. What about your position in Washington? Primera. Askid. I've been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation, Michael said. If I'm charged with any crimes, I'll be terminated immediately and barred from ever working in government again. Marcus was taking notes furiously. Michael, have you been formally charged with anything? Not yet, but the lead investigator made it clear that charges are likely, unless I can prove I had no knowledge of the fraudulent activities and cooperate fully with their investigation. What kind of cooperation are they looking for? I asked. Michael's face darkened. They want me to provide detailed information about every conversation I had with Richard Blackwood and his senior staff. They want access to all my files, emails, and personal communications from the time I worked there, and they want me to testify against Richard and his partners in exchange for immunity from prosecution. That sounds reasonable, Marcus said. If you're innocent, cooperation should help clear your name. It should, Michael agreed. But here's the problem. Richard Blackwood is claiming that I was a full partner in the fraudulent activities. He says I designed the efficiency improvements specifically to hide the cost inflation, and that I received bonuses for helping maintain the fraud. He's produced documents with my signature that I don't remember signing, authorizing budget adjustments that I never approved. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe, hit the like button, and share in the comments a similar experience you've had. I looked at my son and saw something I hadn't seen since the car incident 7 years earlier. Genuine fear. Not fear of consequences for something he had done wrong, but fear of being destroyed by something completely beyond his control. Michael, tell me honestly, I said. Did you know anything about fraudulent activities at Blackwood Development? Dad, I swear to you, I had no idea, he replied without hesitation. I was hired to improve project efficiency and reduce construction timelines. I implemented new scheduling software, negotiated better prices with suppliers, and trained their project managers in lean construction techniques. Everything I did was designed to save money legitimately, not to hide fraudulent billing. Marcus looked up from his notes. The problem is proving that. If Richard Blackwood has documents with your signature, and if those documents were used to facilitate fraud, it doesn't matter whether you intended to commit crimes. The law treats willful ignorance the same as active participation. So what are our options? I asked. 3 possibilities, Marcus replied. First, we fight the charges and try to prove Michael's innocence in court. That could take 2 to 3 years, cost over $1 million in legal fees, and result in prison time if we lose. Second, Michael cooperates fully with the investigation, testifies against Blackwood, and hopes the prosecutors offer immunity. Third, we try to negotiate a settlement where Michael admits to negligent oversight but not criminal intent. What would a settlement look like? Michael asked. Probably full repayment of all consulting fees, civil penalties, possible community service, and permanent disbarment from federal contracting, Marcus said. You'd keep your freedom, but you'd be financially ruined and professionally destroyed. Michael sat quietly for several minutes, processing his options. Finally, he looked up at me with the same expression he'd had when I told him he needed to move out of my house 7 years earlier. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. What is it? If I lose everything, if I have to declare bankruptcy and start over from nothing again, will you still respect me? Will you still consider me worthy of being your son and your business partner? The question hit me like a physical blow. Here was my son, facing potential criminal charges and financial ruin through no fault of his own, worried that I might think less of him for circumstances beyond his control. Michael, you're my son, I said firmly. Nothing that happens with this investigation will change that. If you lose every penny you've earned, if you have to start over completely, you'll still be the man who learned to value hard work and respect for others. You'll still be the person who rebuilt his character and earned back my trust through consistent actions over 7 years. Even if I end up costing our business money, he asked. Even if defending me damages Patterson-Hartwell's reputation, even then, I replied without hesitation. Because this isn't about money or reputation. This is about family. And family doesn't abandon each other when times get tough. Over the next 6 months, we fought the federal investigation with everything we had. Marcus assembled a team of criminal defense attorneys and forensic accountants. We spent over $200,000 in legal fees, reviewing every document, analyzing every transaction, and preparing Michael's defense. The investigation revealed that Richard Blackwood had been running an elaborate fraud scheme for over a decade.